The great hall of the Valdari Council was filled with panicked voices and flashing emergency lights. Ambassador Visas stood before the massive crystal communication array, his 6 arms trembling as he input the coordinates for a species they had only heard whispers about humans. The situation was desperate, beyond anything their ancient civilization had ever faced. 3 worlds in 4 days, Visas spoke into the transmitter, his voice breaking. The Nexus Horde doesn't just conquer, they consume everything. Our people, our cities, even the atmosphere itself, gets processed into fuel for their bioships. The other council members watched in silence, as their last hope traveled through space, toward a young species that most considered barely civilized. Meanwhile, Captain Kim Tae-ho was enjoying his morning coffee on the bridge of the UES Harmony, when the communication officer suddenly straightened in his chair. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission on all frequencies. It's not from Earth." Kim set down his cup and walked over, curious about what could be so urgent. The alien message played through the bridge, speakers in broken but understandable English. The voice was clearly not human, too musical, with strange clicking sounds between words. "We are the Valdari. Our worlds are dying. We have heard stories of your kind's skill in warfare. Please, we beg for your help against the Nexus Horde." Kim immediately forwarded the message to Earth's Strategic Command, where Admiral Park Soman was already dealing with 3 different border disputes and a mining colony rebellion. When she heard the alien plea, she paused her other work. This was bigger than anything humanity had encountered before. "They're asking for military assistance," Park told her staff during the emergency briefing. "But we know nothing about their technology, their enemies, or even where exactly they are in the galaxy." She pulled up star charts on the main screen. "However, this could be humanity's first real chance to prove ourselves on the galactic stage." The debate in the Strategic Command lasted 6 hours. Some argued that humanity wasn't ready for alien conflicts. Others worried about getting involved in someone else's war. But Park made the final decision based on one simple fact. If the Valdari were desperate enough to contact a species they'd never met before, the threat must be real. "We send a small fleet," she announced. 30 ships, maximum. Medical supplies, evacuation transports, and just enough firepower to help them defend their remaining worlds. "We're not going to war. We're providing humanitarian aid." The room buzzed with activity as officers began planning humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. Captain Kim received his new orders within hours. The Harmony would lead a mixed fleet of military and civilian vessels toward Valdari space. As he watched Earth shrink behind them, Kim wondered if they truly understood what they were getting themselves into. President Lee Do-sum stood in the Oval Office at 3 in the morning, still wearing her pajamas as she reviewed the emergency briefing. The coffee was cold, but her mind was sharp as she read through the alien distress call for the 3rd time. This wasn't just another diplomatic crisis. This was humanity's chance to step onto the galactic stage. 30 ships, she said firmly, to the assembled military leaders on the video call. Not 29, not 31. We help them defend their people, but we don't turn this into a full-scale war. She signed the authorization papers with a steady hand. Officially launching Operation Helping Hand. The name itself reflected humanity's intentions. They were extending a helping hand to neighbors in need, nothing more. Commander Choi Min received the call while he was having dinner with his family. Within 2 hours, he was aboard his flagship, reviewing crew assignments and mission parameters. The orders were crystal clear. Assess the alien situation, help evacuate civilians if needed, and establish basic defensive positions to buy the Valdari. Time to regroup. The human fleet that assembled at Luna Station was an odd mix of vessels. Military destroyers floated alongside converted cargo ships packed with medical supplies and emergency rations. Captain Yoon Hae-jin walked through the corridors of her medical ship's sanctuary, checking that every bed was equipped with universal life support systems. Nobody knew what alien biology might require, so they'd packed everything from basic bandages to advanced surgical robots. It's like preparing for a disaster relief mission, Yoon told her medical staff during the briefing. We're going to help injured people, evacuate families, and maybe patch up some alien soldiers. Standard humanitarian work, just in space. Her team nodded confidently, though privately many wondered what alien blood might look like. Lieutenant Seo Junwoo sat in the communications bay of the lead destroyer, monitoring incoming messages from Valdari space. Every few hours, another transmission arrived, always with the same desperate but grateful tone. The aliens kept thanking humanity for coming to help, and repeatedly mentioned they only needed assistance protecting 2 outer colonies from the approaching enemy forces. They're being very specific about what they want, CO reported to Commander Choi. Defensive colonies Kepler-4 4-B and Kepler-4 3-8B. Civilian evacuation support, and maybe some tactical advice. They're not asking us to hunt down their enemies or launch counterattacks. He highlighted several key phrases in the translations. They keep using words like shield and protect, but never attack or destroy. As the fleet jumped to faster than light travel, the crew settled into their routines. Nobody expected this to be a long mission. Help the aliens defend their colonies, evacuate whoever needed evacuating, and head home with humanity's first successful alien assistance mission complete. It seemed straightforward enough. The journey to Valdari space would take 6 days. By day 3, the grateful alien messages had turned more urgent, but still polite and specific about their needs. When Commander Choi's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sight before them was nothing like what they'd expected. The Valdari homeworld wasn't just under attack, it was being systematically torn apart. Massive biomechanical ships, each one the size of a city block, swarmed around the planet like angry wasps. Their hulls pulsed with organic light, and strange, tentacle-like appendages reached out to grab chunks of orbital stations. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Seo from the communications deck. "Look at those ships. They're alive." The Nexus vessels moved with fluid grace, constantly shifting and adapting their shapes as Valdari crystal beam weapons struck their hulls. What should have been devastating hits barely left scratches on the living metal surfaces. The ships were beautiful to watch but clearly outmatched. Their vessels looked like flying cathedrals made of pure crystal, firing brilliant rainbow beams that lit up space like fireworks. But for every Nexus ship they managed to destroy, 3 more seemed to take its place. The alien defenders were being slowly pushed back toward their planet's atmosphere. Captain Kim received an urgent transmission requesting immediate boarding for diplomatic contact. He took a small shuttle to the alien flagship, passing through a protective energy field that felt like swimming through warm honey. The inside of the Valdari ship was breathtaking. Everything was made of the same living crystal, with corridors that seemed to grow rather than being built. Fleet Commander Vess was waiting in what appeared to be a command garden, surrounded by crystal trees that displayed tactical information on their surfaces. The alien looked almost human, but taller and thinner, with skin that had a faint silver shimmer. His large eyes showed exhaustion and desperate hope as he greeted Kim. "Thank you for coming," Vess said through a translation device that made his voice sound musical. "We don't have much time. The Nexus will reach our outer colonies in less than 48 hours. Kepler-4 for 2B has 3 million civilians, and Kepler-438b has another 2 million. We need your ships to help evacuate them before the harvesting begins." Kim nodded, but had to ask the obvious question. What exactly is harvesting? Vess's expression darkened. The Nexus doesn't just kill. They consume everything. People, buildings, even the air and soil. They process it all into fuel for more bioships. After they're done, planets become lifeless rocks floating in space. Meanwhile, Private Namgyate was doing what he did best, watching patterns from his small reconnaissance ship hidden in an asteroid field. While everyone else focused on the battle, Nam tracked the movement of individual Nexus vessels across multiple star systems. After 6 hours of careful observation, he made a discovery that would change everything. Commander Nam's excited voice came through the comm system. These things aren't just randomly attacking, they're following orders. Look at this movement data. Every attack follows the same pattern. They hit infrastructure first, then population centers, then they harvest in a specific sequence. Someone or something is controlling all of this from a central location. Commander Choi spread Private Nam's intelligence reports across the holographic display in his command room. While the Valdari were busy planning evacuation routes and calculating how many transport ships they'd need, Choi was seeing something completely different. The data showed clear supply lines, predictable attack patterns, and vulnerable points in the Nexus formation. They're thinking like prey, Choi muttered to himself, studying the alien evacuation plans. All defense, no offense. He called his senior officers for an emergency strategy meeting. We're not just going to sit here and watch civilians get loaded onto ships. We're going to hit these supply lines and buy everyone more time. Dr. Bae Soo-jin had been working around the clock in her laboratory, analyzing fragments of destroyed Nexus bioships that the Valdari had collected. Under her microscope, she could see the incredible complexity of their living hull material. But after 48 hours of study, she found something interesting, a weakness. Look at this, she said excitedly to her research team. These neural pathways that control ship functions. They're incredibly sophisticated, but also incredibly sensitive. A targeted electromagnetic pulse at the right frequency could overload their entire nervous system. She ran the calculations again to be sure, but here's the problem. If we start actively hunting them down, instead of just defending, they might adapt faster than we can develop new weapons. Captain Park Dongmin was reviewing defensive positions when Choi's new orders came through. Instead of staying back to protect the evacuation transports, his destroyer squadron was being sent on an attack mission against Nexus supply convoys heading toward the outer colonies. Are you sure about this, Commander? Park asked over the comm channel. The Valdari specifically asked us to focus on evacuation support. But Choi was adamant, the best defense was a good offense, and they had a chance to stop the enemy before they reached civilian populations. Park's 3 destroyers launched their attack at dawn, using Dr. Bae's electromagnetic pulse weapons. The first Nexus harvester ship they encountered writhed in space like a wounded animal as its neural networks overloaded. The biomechanical hull convulsed, changed colors from deep purple to sickly yellow, and finally went dead in space. Target destroyed, Park reported with satisfaction, moving to intercept the second convoy. Within 6 hours, his squadron had eliminated 3 major Nexus harvester groups that were heading directly toward the civilian colonies. The Valdari were amazed by the effectiveness of the human attack. Fleet Commander Vess contacted Choi immediately. Your tactical approach is incredible. We've been fighting defensively for months, but you've destroyed more enemy ships in one day than we managed in weeks. However, his tone carried a note of concern. But please remember, we only asked for help protecting our evacuation efforts. We don't want this conflict to spread to other systems. Dr. Bae was monitoring the aftermath of the attacks when she noticed something troubling. Commander, the surviving Nexus ships are already adapting to our EMP frequency, and they're sending distress signals toward their home territory. If we keep pursuing them, we might be inviting a much larger response. The evacuation of both Valdari colonies was completed successfully within 72 hours. Commander Choi stood on his bridge, watching the last transport ships jump to safety, carrying over 5 million alien civilians away from the approaching Nexus forces. By any measure, the mission had been a complete success. The colonies were safe, the civilians were alive, and humanity had proven itself as a reliable ally. But Choi couldn't shake the feeling that they were only treating symptoms instead of the disease itself. He spent the next day poring over intelligence data with Private Nam, mapping out every Nexus movement they'd detected across the sector. What they found was disturbing. 17 staging areas, Choi said, pointing to red markers scattered across the star chart. They're not just attacking the Valdari. They're systematically working through this entire region of space. Even if we save these 2 colonies, there are dozens of other worlds that will be next. He traced the pattern with his finger. They'll just regroup and come back stronger. The emergency transmission to Earth was marked with the highest priority codes. Choi laid out his analysis in stark terms. The Nexus wasn't just a local threat to the Valdari, but a spreading infection that would eventually consume everything in its path. We need more ships, he concluded. Enough to hit all 17 staging areas simultaneously before they can coordinate a response. Admiral Jin Sora arrived 2 weeks later with a fleet that made the original rescue mission look tiny. 40 warships dropped out of hyperspace, including massive heavy cruisers that could level entire cities and fighter squadrons, numbering in the hundreds. Jin was a veteran of the Mars Colonial War and understood the logic of overwhelming force. You're absolutely right, Commander, she told Choi during their first strategy meeting. Half measures don't work against an enemy like this. We either eliminate the threat completely, or we'll be fighting them forever. She pulled up tactical displays showing strike plans for all 17 Nexus positions. We hit them all at once, fast and hard, before they know what's happening. Ambassador Dissis arrived on the human flagship, looking increasingly worried. The Valdari diplomat had been grateful beyond words when the evacuations succeeded, but now he was seeing something that scared him. Please, Admiral Jin, Commander Choi, your mission is complete. Our people are safe. You've done everything we asked, and more. But the threat still exists, Jin replied calmly. Those staging areas are still active. They'll just build up their forces and attack someone else next month. She showed these as the intelligence reports. We have a chance to end this permanently. Tice's silver skin seemed too pale as he studied the human battle plans. You're talking about expanding this war across 7 different star systems. What if other species get involved? What if you provoke enemies we don't even know about yet? His musical voice carried genuine fear. Sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease. But Jin had already made her decision. The orders were going out to all ships. Operation Total Victory would begin in 48 hours. 3 months after the successful evacuation, massive human industrial ships began appearing in Faldar space. Captain Lim Jae-sung commanded the construction vessel Forge, a kilometer-long ship filled with automated factories and building equipment. He watched through his viewport as robotic workers assembled the first human supply depot on Faldari Prime's second moon. We need permanent logistics support if we're going to maintain security in this region, Lim explained to the concerned Valdari officials who had come to observe the construction. You can't run military operations from ships alone. We need fuel depots, repair facilities, and communication relays. The aliens watched nervously as more human structures rose from their moon's surface. The Valdari had expected their human allies to leave after the colonies were secured, but instead, more ships kept arriving. Captain Lim wasn't just building one depot. He was overseeing construction projects on 3 different worlds. Each facility was larger than anything the Valdari had built, with defensive shields and weapon platforms that the aliens found unnecessarily intimidating. Colonel Oh Min-young arrived on the main Valdari command station with a briefcase full of new security protocols. She was a small woman with a pleasant smile, but her orders were absolute. From now on, all fleet movements need to be coordinated through human command, she announced to the assembled Valdari officers. We've identified 17 security vulnerabilities in your current defense grid. Fleet Commander Vess tried to object politely. Colonel, We appreciate your expertise, but these are our home systems. We know our own defensive capabilities. O's smile never wavered as she pulled up holographic displays, showing Faldari tactical weaknesses. With respect, Commander, the Nexus nearly destroyed you in 4 days. Our analysis shows your command structure is too decentralized for effective coordination. Within weeks, Faldari patrol schedules were being set by human computers. Alien ships found themselves asking permission to enter their own star systems, as human checkpoints appeared at every major hyperspace route. The security measures were undoubtedly effective, but they made the Faldari feel like guests in their own territory. The situation became more uncomfortable when human ships started requisitioning Faldari mining operations. Captain Park Hee-young arrived at the main asteroid mining facility with legal documents, authorizing human access to rare minerals needed for military equipment. It's temporary, she assured the Faldari miners. Just until we finish building the new defense network. But temporary had a way of becoming permanent. Human engineers improved the mining efficiency by 300%, which was impressive, but also meant that human supervisors were now running Faldari industrial operations. The aliens found themselves working shifts determined by human managers and following safety protocols written in English. Fleet Commander Vess called an emergency council session on the Valdar homeworld. The crystal chambers that had once echoed with desperate pleas for help now buzzed with worried conversations about their human allies. They saved us, Vess admitted to the assembled leaders. But now they're running our military, our industry, and our transportation networks. When does protection become control? The council members looked around at each other uncomfortably. Outside their windows, they could see human patrol ships maintaining their protective orbits, keeping the Faldari safe whether they wanted it or not. The emergency session of Earth's Senate lasted 14 hours straight. Admiral Jin's holographic testimony played on repeat as lawmakers debated humanity's response to what she called the greatest threat to organic life in the galaxy. The images of consumed Faldari worlds and biomechanical horror ships swayed even the most peaceful representatives. We're not just talking about defending our new allies anymore, Senator Chen declared to the packed chamber. According to Admiral Jin's intelligence, the Nexus has already consumed 47 different civilizations. If we don't act now, humanity could be next. The final vote wasn't even close to 847 in favor of full military mobilization, only 23 against. General Han Woo-jin received the authorization while he was having breakfast with his family on Mars. Within 6 hours, he was aboard the massive command ship Indomitable, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. 3 complete battle fleets, over 900 warships, would advance into Nexus territory, simultaneously from different directions. This isn't a rescue mission anymore, Han told his fleet commanders during the strategy briefing. This is extermination. We're going to hunt down every single Nexus bioship, destroy every breeding facility, and eliminate this threat permanently. The holographic battle plans showed strike routes extending far beyond Faldari space, deep into unexplored sectors of the galaxy. Meanwhile, Titan manufacturing facilities had transformed into the largest weapons factory humanity had ever built. The moon's surface was covered with shipyards working 24 hours a day, producing everything from fighter jets to kilometer-long battleships. Captain Shinyuna stood on the bridge of her brand-new destroyer, Relentless, one of 50 identical ships that had rolled off the production lines that week. It's incredible, she told her crew, as they watched another completed warship launch. From the orbital dock, they're building ships faster than we can train crews to operate them. The recruitment centers across human space were flooded with volunteers, eager to join the war effort. Young people from Earth, Mars, the asteroid colonies, and even the outer settlements were signing up faster than the military could process them. Ambassador, ISIS had been given special permission to observe human fleet preparations from the diplomatic stationed at the edge of Valdari space. What he saw there made him physically ill. Thousands of human warships stretched as far as his enhanced alien vision could see, organized into perfect military formations that could devastate entire star systems. "How many ships do you need to defeat the Nexus?" he asked Admiral Jin during one of their final meetings. Jin pulled up tactical displays showing Nexus-controlled territory. "All of them," she replied simply. "Every single ship we can build, every weapon we can manufacture, every soldier we can train. The Nexus has been growing for centuries. We're going to cut them down to nothing in months." Dices watched the final preparations with growing dread. The humans weren't just planning to defeat their enemy, they were preparing to reshape the entire galaxy. Fleet after fleet disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward a war that would determine which species would survive and which would become extinct. The war against the Nexus ended on a Tuesday morning with the complete sterilization of their homeworld. Colonel Jang Hyung stood on the bridge of her battleship, watching as the final biomechanical structures on the planet's surface dissolved under concentrated plasma bombardment. After 8 months of relentless hunting, humanity had achieved something no other species had managed: the complete extinction of the Nexus threat. "Target confirmed, destroyed," Jang reported to General Han. "No biosignatures detected, no organic material remaining. The homeworld is now a sterile rock." Her crew cheered as the last traces of the species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries vanished into radioactive dust. It had been a thorough job, too thorough, some would later argue. The human military had been devastatingly efficient. Every Nexus bioship had been tracked down and destroyed, even those that tried to flee to distant galaxies. Every breeding world had been found and cleansed. Every trace of Nexus technology had been captured or eliminated. In 8 months, humanity had accomplished what other civilizations couldn't manage in centuries of warfare. But victory created new problems. Admiral Park Soon-hee found herself in command of 47 star systems that had been completely depopulated by Nexus consumption. These weren't just empty worlds. They were strategic locations that controlled major hyperspace routes and contained valuable resources. "We can't just leave them undefended," she argued during a meeting with Earth's leadership. "Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does galactic politics." The Human Colonial Authority was established 3 months after the war ended. Admiral Park became its first director, overseeing the settlement and administration of former Nexus territory. Human colonists began arriving by the thousands, establishing cities on worlds that had been lifeless rocks just a year earlier. Mining operations, research stations, and military bases appeared across dozens of systems. The Valdari watched these developments with growing alarm. Their small territory was now completely surrounded by human-controlled space. Captain Moon, Seo-jun commanded one of the patrol ships that monitored the newly established Valdari protection zone, ensuring that no hostile forces could threaten humanity's alien allies. All civilian traffic must register with human authorities before entering Valdari space. Moon explained to a confused alien trader who had been doing business in the region for decades. "It's for your own protection. We maintain constant patrols to ensure no hostile forces can establish a presence here." The trader looked around at the human warships stationed at every hyperspace entry point and wondered who exactly they were being protected from. Fleet. Commander Vess received monthly reports about human peacekeeping activities in his territory. Human customs officials inspected all incoming cargo. Human intelligence officers monitored communications for security threats. Human military advisors attended all Valdari defense meetings. The protection was comprehensive and impossible to refuse. "We asked for help defending 2 colonies," Vess told his wife during a private dinner. "Now we have permanent human guardians watching over everything we do." Through their window, they could see human patrol ships maintaining their protective orbits, keeping the Valdari safe in their carefully monitored cage. The galaxy was definitely safer, with the Nexus gone, but many species were starting to wonder if they had simply traded one unstoppable force for another. 5 years after the Nexus War ended, Ambassador This stood before the Galactic Assembly's Grand Chamber, addressing representatives from over 200 different species. His once silver skin had developed stress marks, and his musical voice carried a warning that many in the audience weren't ready to hear. "We asked humanity for help defending 2 colonies," Dices began, his words echoing through the crystal amphitheater. "Today, every ship that enters Valdari space requires human authorization. Every trade agreement needs human approval. Every military decision goes through human advisors." He paused, looking around at the assembled alien diplomats. "The Nexus threat is gone, yes? But we learned something important. When humans solve a problem, they solve it completely and permanently." The audience stirred uncomfortably as Theses continued. 3 more species have made the same request we did. The Kaleri asked for help with pirate raids. The Zephyrians wanted assistance with a plague outbreak. The Mordock needed support against rebel colonies. His voice grew more urgent. In each case, humanity provided exactly what was requested. And in each case, those species discovered that human help comes with human oversight that never ends. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Kim Nari was announcing the formation of the Human Defense Initiative during a ceremony broadcast across human space. Behind her stood representatives from dozens of alien species, all wearing ceremonial sashes, marking their membership in humanity's growing alliance network. "The universe is a dangerous place," President Kim declared to the cameras. "But no species should face extinction alone. The Human Defense Initiative offers comprehensive protection, services to any civilization threatened by forces beyond their control." She gestured to the alien representatives. 67 civilizations have already joined our mutual defense network, and more are applying every day. The terms of these defense treaties were becoming increasingly favorable to humanity. In exchange for protection, member species provided access to their resources, accepted human military bases on their worlds, and allowed human administrators to oversee their strategic decisions. It was a good deal for everyone involved. Humans got influence and resources, while aliens got guaranteed survival. Captain Lee Donghain commanded one of the massive exploration ships now heading toward the Andromeda Galaxy. His mission was simple: find new civilizations, assess their needs, and offer humanity's assistance with any problems they might have. The ship's cargo holds were packed with medical supplies, defensive weapons, and construction equipment, everything needed to help species in distress. Back in the carefully monitored chambers of the Valdari Council, Fleet Commander Vess was reading intelligence reports about human expansion into other galaxies. The meeting room was beautiful, as always, but now human security cameras watched from every crystal wall, and human translators monitored every conversation. "They're not conquerors in the traditional sense," Vess explained to his fellow council members. "They don't invade or destroy. They rescue. They solve problems. They make everything safer and more efficient." He set down the reports with a heavy sigh. "But once they help you, you discover that independence and safety are apparently mutually exclusive." The other council members nodded grimly. Outside their windows, human patrol ships maintained their protective orbits, just as they had every day for the past 5 years. The Valdari were the safest they had ever been in their species' history. They were also the most carefully supervised.